Welcome, everybody. Michelle Noguchi with the Invest It Forward program, the complimentary program to the stock market game that you're playing in class. I have the pleasure, the privilege of really working with our financial firm partners, bringing the stock market game to life and really bringing the industry and its professionals to your classroom doorstep. So these are fun, quick, informal. We will be recording this first portion. As I said, we'll stop that midway through and give you the chance to ask any questions that you might have. You can also use the chat box at any point during the program. Vincent and I will be watching that, and we'll share those questions out. But delighted to have you here. Thank you for making and taking the time. We know this is a chock-a-block period during the school year. So without further ado, I would love to welcome our newest partner, actually, to Invest It Forward, Allspring, and we have 3 of their great professionals online. I am not going to introduce them. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. So a few minutes, 3 to 4 minutes-ish of kind of your background academically and your career path. And Carrie, I think I'm going to throw that over to you first. Each of our volunteers does have co-hosting ability and the opportunity to share their screen. So just want to let you know, maybe there might be something fun that pops up as well. Carrie, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks you all for the time. My name's Carrie. I grew up in Virginia and now live in Boston, where our team is based. I went to the University of Virginia, majored in economics and commerce. And I joined this team 8 years ago, where I work as an analyst. What that means is my job is really focused on learning about companies, understanding their businesses, and evaluating if they might be good investments for us. As a kid, I really liked math and learning about the world, particularly in economic sense, which drew me to this career. And as a personal note, let me just share, I've got, in Boston here, I've got a husband and 2 dogs, and these are my dogs. They keep me laughing and relaxed when I'm in downtime. So that's Duck in the front, sitting up, and Peach. They're goofballs.
That's great. Thank you. Really appreciate you sharing not just your own story, but that of your 4-legged friends, which I think might be a trend today. So, Carrie, maybe we'll take your screen off and we'll shoot on over to Derek.
Hi, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for coming out to chat with us this morning. We're really excited to talk to you a bit about what we do and hear really more interesting about what you do. So my name is Derek Irwin. We're all on the same team. I also live in Boston. Our team is called the Intrinsic Emerging Market Equity Team at Allspring Global Investments, and we'll talk about what that means a little later on. On the team, I am what's known as a portfolio manager. So in addition to doing the stock analysis that Carrie does, I also think about how we look around the world and put stocks together in a way where we can hopefully, watch them go up and do well over time, but also manage risk, which we need to think about for our clients who have, different decisions around how much risk they want to take when they invest around the world. And so that's a big part of my job. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I don't know if there's anybody from Buffalo here. Hopefully someone, at least in the recording, is from there, and ended up going to school not far down the road at Colgate University, where I, unlike my finance teammates, I actually studied geology. I decided I like looking at rocks more than I like looking at numbers. So I'm not sure why I'm here now, but here I am, and I've had a great time doing it. And even today, when I travel around the world, I take time to look at rocks and often get to go deep underneath rocks, looking at gold mines and platinum mines and other mines around the world. So incredibly, I still use my geology degree just as much as I use my finance knowledge. So personally, I live in Boston as well. I have 2 kids who should be on this presentation, but they're not. I have a 7th grade girl and a 11th grade boy who are great. And I too, since we are sharing, have a dog. It's a new dog to our family, and his name is Milo. And I think we can all agree he's an incredibly cute dog. And this is not a very old photo. He's already much
OMG.
bigger. That's right. He's a nice boy. So that's me, and I'm just delighted to chat with you guys today.
Thanks so much, Derek. Oh my gosh. I mean, so much floof all in one place. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, and thanks for having all of us, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here as well. My name's Bob Rapchek. I'm also on the Intrinsic Emerging Market Equity team, and I've been working in the investment business now for over 30 years. So gosh, I can't believe I say that I've been here for so long. I'm also grew up in New York, upstate New York, went to school in Cambridge in Massachusetts. And I now live just outside Boston, as that's where all three of us are, all in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And I fell into this career also just not by design. I was studying economics in college and enjoyed it. And I started my first job in the investment business, actually in emerging markets investing, loved it and stayed with it. I really had very little knowledge of the industry before I started. But it really satisfied my curiosity and my interest in current events, and also my background in, and I guess STEM, you'd say, science, math, technology, et cetera. So that was it all came together for me, and I've been here ever since. My current role on the Intrinsic Emerging Market team is to really handle all the non-investment aspects of the business, and there are a lot of those. So it's obviously in any company there are lots of aspects to running the organization. Because I'm pretty old, I've been doing this for a long time, and I have kids who are in their 20s. And so I've actually gone through, they've gone through the experience I think you're going through, and just learning about, what it means to invest and getting, smarter on and more aware on what's happening, what happens there. I've also seen a lot of investment cycles, where stocks and bonds prices have gone up and where they've gone down. So over the course of 30 years, you see quite a few of those. And it's really an important lesson that, things that come up or go up sometimes come down as well. I do have a dog, but I don't have a picture of my dog. Oh, maybe Carrie. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Carrie. My dog is about 12 years old, so also pretty old. His name's Kid, and he's incredibly happy. Anyway, he brings us a lot of joy. We call him our therapy dog, because again, there's everyone needs a therapy dog in my mind. With that, I'm gonna maybe stop sharing the screen, and I think that now is a good opportunity to really introduce Allspring, maybe the company that we work for. Allspring Global Investments, is an institutional investment firm, and we manage a lot of money. It's over $400 billion of capital or investments for our clients. And what does that mean? As an investment firm, we manage money for companies that have a retirement plan or a 401k plan for their employees. So when people reach retirement age, they hope to have enough money for their daily living, and so that they don't have to work after they retire. And one of our most important roles is to help them do that. We help companies and employees, maintain or grow their money through their working lives so that they can pay for retirement, or the employers can pay their employees during retirement. Allspring is big. As I said, we have over $400 billion that we manage for customers, but we also have about 1,300 employees. Our headquarters is in Charlotte, North Carolina, but we have offices all around the world. We have 23 offices in cities in both the US as well as outside of the US. That's because we are a global firm. We're managing investments for clients who are based here in the United States, but also based around the globe. And that makes it a little bit different and pretty exciting for us. Allspring is a private company. That means that we're not owned or not listed on the stock market, nor are we owned by a big bank or other big company. We're private and we control our own destiny. So we manage money using a combination of bonds, stocks, and currencies. You've all heard about the stock market and the bond market through prior speakers and the stock market game for sure. So what we do at Allspring Global is that we buy and sell stocks and bonds to help individuals and companies reach their financial goals. And we use the market to select stocks and bonds that we want to include in our portfolios to help us achieve those objectives. The stock and bond market moves every day, goes up and it goes down every day, frankly. So it requires a special skill to really watch the market moves and make decisions on what to buy and sell in a portfolio. We like to buy enough securities that we don't have too much risk in just a small number of companies that might resonate and, too many eggs in one basket, for example. We want to have diversification, and I know you've all heard about that. To manage money, it requires a team of portfolio managers, analysts, and support people to construct a portfolio of securities and service our clients. Because we at Allspring offer so many choices of these investment portfolios, we have about 23 different investment teams investing in different ways and in different assets and in different asset classes. The Intrinsic Emerging Market team is simply one of those 23 teams here at Allspring Investments. It's now time to hear from two of my colleagues on the Intrinsic Emerging Market team, Derek Irwin and Carrie Irwin.
So, as Bob said, we are what's known as the Intrinsic Emerging Market Equity Team, which is a lot of words. And I thought maybe I'd talk a bit about what that means. First of all, on the team, there's three of us here today. We actually have 11 people on the team. We sit in Boston and we also sit in Singapore. And our job is to look around the world and find really interesting investments. It's kind of like one big stock market game that never ever ends, and we get paid to do it. So it's kind of a fun job, right? I kind of enjoy it, and we get to meet interesting people as well. So, but Intrinsic Emerging Markets, so sort of a strange name, and I thought maybe I'd talk a bit about what that means, and I'll start with the easy part, the emerging market part, right? So some of you may have heard of emerging markets, some of you maybe not, right? If I understand correctly, your stock market game focuses on US American companies, right? Our stock market game focuses on countries all over the world, and particularly countries that are less developed or that are still growing very fast. Our biggest markets, for instance, China, but we also invest in places like Thailand, the Philippines, Brazil, Colombia, Mexico. Carrie focuses on Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, South Africa, Egypt, all over the world, in countries that are growing very, very fast, and really, often coming from being quite poor, but hopefully developing into wealthier societies and wealthier countries. And frankly, part of our job is to help those countries and companies in those companies develop and help lift people out of poverty, which I think is great. Just like the US and just like, say, Europe, these countries all have stock markets and we can all go visit them. It's the same thing. They're smaller. So for instance, just for comparison's sake, I know you guys are all investing in a lot of companies that are listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Well, the New York Stock Exchange has about 2,200 companies, give or take, right? And if you add the value of all those companies up, incredibly, it's $28 trillion, right? That's big. That's a lot of money, right? But if I go to China, for instance, the biggest stock market in China is the Shanghai Stock Exchange. Same thing. It's like New York, it's just Shanghai, right? Also has about 2,200 stocks, about the same number of companies, but altogether, they're only worth about 7 trillion. So it's a little bit smaller, but pretty much the same game, right? We're just playing with a little smaller game board, and it's really fun. And we go all over the place and get to do this in stock markets all over the world. But I guess the question is, why bother, right? I can go and buy Tesla, or I can go and buy Microsoft here in the US. Why bother investing in the emerging markets at all? And a couple of reasons. And the first is the growth, right? America and the developed markets, as we call them, are very, very big, but so are emerging markets. In fact, if we added up all the emerging markets, China, Brazil, South Africa, etc. They're all about the same size in terms of the size of their economy and all the stuff they make as the developed markets. So it's this whole half the world that we can go and invest in that are different companies, different cultures, different economies. And that makes it really fun. What's really exciting, though, is that while these economies are about half of the global economy, they're only like less than one fifth of the global stock market value. So, when you think about it, if they're making the same amount of stuff, shouldn't those companies be worth maybe something pretty close to, the companies in the developed markets? So we think that these are fast growing companies in really cool economies where we can make a lot of money, and the growth part's really important, right? So when we look around the world, China grows at 5% a year, right? Maybe that seems like a lot, maybe it doesn't, but the US grows at 2, right? Europe grows at 1. So, it's growing 5 times as fast as Europe. So we're hopefully going to find companies that are also growing fast and can sell things. The second thing I really like about emerging markets is like the really innovative companies, right? So emerging markets have unique problems. How do we feed our poor people? How do we keep things cold in an environment where we don't have as much electricity? But they also have problems, and they solve problems that are just as valuable here. Internet e-commerce. They probably have better e-commerce in China than we do here. The e-commerce companies in China are better than Amazon. There's no question about it. And of course, they all come over here as well. You guys, I'm sure, or most of you probably have TikTok on your phone. That's a Chinese company, right? It's an incredible company. You probably all have made TikToks today. And that's a Chinese company. So these are great companies that are doing really, really interesting things around the world. And they're coming up with really creative solutions to problems. And so it's a lot of fun. And the other thing, which you guys are probably experiencing, is when you do your stock market game, I bet when you want to go buy a company, maybe Tesla, right? There's probably 4 or 5 other kids in your class who also want to buy Tesla. But there's not that many people investing in emerging markets. So for me, I can go find really cool stock ideas and really cool companies to invest in. And maybe there's not as many other people investing in it. So maybe I can find a way, to make some money and watch these stocks go up where other people aren't looking. And that's always kind of exciting. So emerging markets, pretty fun, pretty interesting place to invest for sure. The harder question is intrinsic, right? We kind of made that name up, right? But intrinsic means internal, right? And this is where I think we're very different than what you do in the stock market game. So if you think about your stock market game, the time you have is pretty short, right? Maybe a year, if I understand it correctly. So your job is to say, okay, what stock can I get that's going to go up a lot in a year, right? And what happens after that, I don't really care. Hopefully it keeps going up, maybe. But all I care about is, does that stock go up over time? And that's a great question, right? Because we all want stocks to go up in this business. But in a year, it can be anything, right? Interest rates, the economy, maybe it's a fad, right? You guys remember Roblox during the pandemic? Everyone played Roblox. My daughter, all she did was play Roblox, and that company actually went public. You can buy shares in that company. It went public. I think the shares cost $45 a share. And in 2021, it went up to something like $135. So up 200% a year. That's probably a pretty good stock to have in your account, right? For your stock trading game. But we ask a little different question, right? We're asking not so much, is this stock going up? We're asking, is this company getting bigger? Is this company creating things or creating what we call value that will make it more valuable, not in 1 year, but in 5 years, 10 years, or even more? Is it employing people in its economy? Is it coming up with really interesting solutions to the problems of their countries? So it's a much different question. And that really changes our sort of emphasis in the business, because it's not just about the stock price. Stock price really should reflect all of that over time, right? But it's, how does it grow over time? So for instance, Roblox, right? Roblox had a great year. 2021 was great, but then it fell down. It's actually now trading below its IPO price. People aren't playing it as much. I don't know about the last time you played Roblox, but I don't see it in my house ever. So kind of a one-hit wonder, right? Whereas we own a supermarket in South Africa. It's pretty boring, right? It's a supermarket, just like you would go to in the US. But they found a way to provide food for South Africans, particularly less wealthy South Africans, that's fresh and safe and affordable. And from our standpoint, we look at that over 20 years, and that stock has gone up 2,600% because they've just been able to provide more and more food for more and more people. And for me, that's a lot more interesting. So it really is more thinking, not so much what's the stock going to do, it's thinking what's the company going to do. So I've been going on and on. Maybe I'll stop there and pass the baton over to Carrie, and she can talk a bit more about how she does this.
Thanks so much. I think you gave a lot of really concrete food for thought for our teacher students in classrooms. And what I really do appreciate and love, I'm somebody who straddles the US and the EU. So providing that international perspective, and that really the world is so much bigger than what we experience here in the US. So I love the kind of more international perspective. And Carrie, now not to steal your thunder, but I'm going to turn on over to you to talk more about your kind of day in the life of an analyst in these roles.
Sure. Well, so day in the life of the analyst, I think something students can relate to is that learning is a huge part of my job. My job is really to try and learn about companies we might want to invest in, evaluating if it might be a good investment for us, and that companies we have invested in, is it still something we want to own and have in the portfolio? So on a day-to-day basis, I do a lot of reading. I read news, company reports and presentations. And what I'm trying to figure out is what's going on in the world and what's going on with this company, which might affect its ability to grow and generate returns. So as Bob said, also kind of watching the market day in, day out and seeing what's moving and trying to figure out why. I also we get into financial statements, or we can try to find out what's driving revenue growth. How have costs evolved, and how does cash flow through the business? These activities together, we're just trying to figure out what drives a company's financial success, empowering them to grow and add value in their community. Eventually, after a lot of research, we get to meet with companies and really hear from the horse's mouth. We ask them about what's their business strategy, what opportunities do they see for the business, as well as competition and threats, which these are almost always really impressive people, sometimes the founders themselves of these companies with great ideas, and we learn a lot from them. Throughout the process, I work a lot with Derek and the other 11 team members we have, and we bounce ideas off each other, we compare notes on what we're learning, and sometimes we disagree, and that's still okay. It's my job to form an opinion about what I think is a good investment, and I write research to justify it and explain it to my team. So it's not just numbers, it's actually storytelling is a really big part of the job too. I thought an interesting example, connecting global events to sort of companies, is I don't know if you've probably all heard of Dubai. Dubai is a city in the United Arab Emirates, which is seen as particularly safe in the Middle East. And it's a very cosmopolitan city. What's happened in the past couple of years is they've seen a lot of population growth. At first, this was from Chinese lockdown. A lot of companies in Hong Kong struggled to deal with that and thought, well, there's no more lockdowns in Dubai. Everybody there has been vaccinated. It's life is back to normal. So there was movement first from that. And then when war broke out in Ukraine, a number of people, both from Russia and Ukraine, have moved to Dubai. It's a safe haven. And there are companies in Dubai that stand to benefit from this population growth. They can be real estate developers, restaurants, shops, financial companies. And one of our investments in Dubai that has benefited is a company called MR Malls. This is a mall landlord. So shops rent space from them to do their own business. And it's this company's job to keep the mall well functioning and to bring customers in. In fact, their biggest mall is at the base of the tallest building in the world. It's called the Burj Khalifa. So it's a really impressive place with a lot of exciting events and people. It's actually kind of a fantastical place. People travel from all over the world to go visit Dubai and inevitably shop. They actually have not just one, but two entire malls dedicated to gold. So one is gold, the other is gold and diamonds. So it's a really kind of fabulous place, showy and exciting. So MR has a lot of intense competition for shoppers' time in Dubai. They have to be at the forefront of drawing people in. And what's interesting is from an analyst perspective is seeing the creative ways they find to do this. I think it's the only time I'll ever see a company report the expense of a dinosaur on their financial statements. The dinosaur was sort of the flagship, boom, we'll put it right at the entrance and really impress people. So we get to look at all kinds of companies, see the creative things they do in their communities, and across a huge footprint: Europe, Middle East, Africa, other teammates, China, India, Brazil. So there's so much dynamism in this job. It keeps things super interesting. But at the end of the day, I just learn. Life, that's a day in the life of the analyst.
That was a fabulous cap, not to mention kind of a deep dive into what a life in a Middle Eastern country is, particularly Bob, I think you had even referenced, what happens around and the innovation of these things. You do things differently in different places, and oftentimes that hot climate might influence, if you will, why there are so many malls, because people go to escape the heat. What I would love to do maybe is, Bob, I'm going to throw a couple questions to each of you, and then for everybody on the line, like I said, we'll stop that recording and we'll go ahead and open up. Bob, you touched on this a little bit in your opening remarks, but I thought maybe you could expand on us, sharing why you think investing is important, what it means to our students when they're at a young age, and what it means to them really over the course of kind of their lifespan. Would you mind talking to that a little bit, please?
Of course. And, investing is obviously very, very near and dear to us, but, over time, you realize how important it is. And I think with my own children, who are now, I mentioned, in their mid-20s, I've been able to monitor and see them grow and learn about investing through the course of their lives to this point. And I think there are a couple key takeaways for me. One is that it's really important to pay attention to the news, because the fact is, current events really impact some investments around the globe. They always have an impact potentially on interest rates or on specific companies. You mentioned the weather, obviously, with Middle Eastern mall companies, obviously. So trends and current events really have a pretty large impact. I think it's also important to really take a long-term view. And I know that in some of your prior classes, people have talked about, trends maybe have a short shelf life. It's very difficult to pick when a stock is going to hit its peak or when it's, to buy it at a low level or at the bottom level. So you can really enjoy that massive gain that a stock may produce. And so it's really important to take a long-term view, to not change your investment allocation significantly. And it's so important to really take advantage of compounding, and because the long term is so important, you really can't start early enough in terms of saving and investing, but also more importantly, learning how to invest your savings and such. And I think diversification is really another critical component of that. It's very difficult to get it right every time. And if you have one investment, one stock, the chances that you're going to get it right, maybe not that high. But if you have a collection of companies in your portfolio, maybe 10, maybe 20, 30 or more, in our case, it's close to 100. But it's okay if one or two or a handful of them don't pan out the way you expect. As long as most of them do, more than 50%, you're doing a good job. And so that's where diversification comes through. But I think from my perspective and my experience, it's really important to really begin to embrace and understand these important issues and topics at an early age. And it's really exciting to see you doing it here.
Thank you so much. Again, we're going to breeze through a couple of real quick questions. Derek, I'll lob the next one to you. If folks had the chance to check out all of your bios, they probably saw a bunch of little characters after all of your names. And I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about kind of the educational arc. You know, it doesn't end when you graduate high school. What happens, or college? What happens that is that lifelong learning? What do all of those designations, licensing, certifications mean?
Yeah, I don't know if I were in high school, if I knew about all the education I would do, I don't know what I would have thought. But you're right. It is an ongoing process. So, all of us have been to college where we studied one way or another. Those guys a little more economics than I did. I then went to graduate school for finance to learn all the stuff I didn't learn in college, I guess. And then beyond that, there are certifications, so tests you can take and courses you can take to learn more about finance. And it sounds, probably from the point of view of a lot of students, pretty terrible. You're like, that's homework forever, right? That doesn't sound that awesome. But it is, because it's an incredibly interesting business. And the more you know about it, the more interesting it gets. You can pick up the newspaper or log into the newspaper, I guess, every single day. And every article you read is relevant to what you're going to do that day. And I don't know there's many people who can say that. So all that education and all that studying does pay off over time with giving a little more richer view, a little more three-dimensional view of the world.
Thanks so much. Carrie, I'm going to throw one on over your way. And maybe, we talk a lot in our realm about DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as a female professional, I wondered if you might speak a little bit to your experience and also just what's happening in the industry and why this is such an important part of its future evolution and kind of recruitment and retention efforts.
Sure. Well, we're a team of 11 people. I happen to be the first woman that joined the team, and now we have 3. And I think the diversity is so important to a team of investment managers, because you need diversification of opinion just as much as you need that will drive diversification of your stock selection. I think statistics show that women tend to be more conservative investors than men do. And I think that it creates a lot more balance in a portfolio when you have a lot of different voices that add to that discussion. So what's nice about the industry is it was becoming more diverse absolutely everywhere. And it's so nice to see. Yeah.
That's great. I love hearing your experience and that you were brave enough to be the first, and it didn't stop there. It kept growing. So really wonderful to hear that. I'm going to go ahead, Vincent. We can stop that recording, I think. And for our teachers and students, we'd love to hear your questions. We were just getting some out there to get us started. You're welcome to put into the chat box. You're welcome to unmute at this point.